everyone, Dr. Steph Chaney here from Living Health Integrative Medicine, and I want to discuss with you something that is becoming more and more important for us to consider as far as chronic diseases go, and that is toxins such as mold toxins in particular, or otherwise known as mycotoxins, and how that can impact and express itself as chronic disease. So, we live in this area, those of you that live in the Maryland, Virginia, D.C. area, this is a very, humid, moist environment. It was essentially built on a swamp, and we have a lot of crazy rainstorms and tornadoes and sometimes hurricanes that unfortunately lead to a situation in our living environment and our working environment where we could be exposed to not just mold, but the toxins and the spores that the mold emits into the air, and we breathe them in. And many people, about a quarter of the population, it's estimated, are genetically not able to eliminate and process out of the body these toxins. And as such, they just keep on recycling them and building them up, almost collecting them like as they go through life everywhere they go into a moldy building, collecting them like they're putting stamps in a scrapbook or something. And so at some point you can become so toxic, and that can override your ability to eliminate toxins to the point where you now start to manifest a lot of different chronic diseases. There's two main sources for mold toxins for people, and one which I alluded to is mold in the environment, generally in an internal environment such as a home or a workplace, especially an area that's been water damaged. So a water damaged building, whether it's a roof leak, a window leak, a basement leak, a flood, maybe the house hasn't had a formal leak at all, but there's things lurking behind the walls where you have washing machines, sinks, faucets, showers, etc. Those can actually eventually lead to issues with people. Another source of mold toxins for people is in the food that you eat. So people are eating moldy food. Blue cheese is not your friend, we'll just say that. But not even obvious things. If you just leave leftovers, even cooked meat in the refrigerator, more than 3 days, if you're eating that food, it's already started to develop fungus and mold, whether you see it or taste it or not. So a lot of different things to consider as far as that goes. Now, the average Joe, 75% of the population, not a big deal. They can live and work in that area, and their system is able to flush it out through the bowels, no problem. But there are a few people, 25% of us, that are genetically susceptible to not being able to unburden themselves of this toxic overload. And so these people, when we genetically test them, will show up, and very often in their history, there either currently is a situation in which they're probably being exposed to mold, or there was a past situation. Prime example, I'm working with someone who has Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroiditis and chronic eczema and some other things. And when we ran the test, she was very susceptible to mold toxins. And digging around in the history, she went to school, middle school, high school for 8 years. She was in this school, and this was, 30, 40 years ago. That shortly after she graduated was closed down because it was condemned for mold. And her first onset of eczema was while she was in high school. So we're kind of taking it back to that point. I have another patient with celiac disease and Hashimoto's, again, another thyroid autoimmune issue, who, when we ran this test, mold susceptibility, definitely a genetic problem. Currently, 2 of her homes are water damaged. One of them was water damaged in the past, and they both have some mold that has to be handled. But the onset of these autoimmune diseases that she had, we were actually able to trace back to a toxin that occurred from likely a bug bite 15, 16 years ago. And because of her inability and multi-susceptibility to these biotoxins, that ended up causing her immune system to go haywire and really start attacking the body. So These mold toxins, if you are genetically susceptible, there is a way for us to test to see if you are, because then it's very, very important that you assess the current environment that you're living and working in, as well as go back into your kind of life history and see if there was anything going on around the onset of symptoms that you had. So what are the symptoms of mold toxin exposure or mycotoxin exposure? They can run the gamut, and it's very, very difficult for conventional doctors sometimes to figure out what's going on with a person. So very often people get diagnosed with having some idiopathic XYZ disease, when idiopathic simply means we don't know what's causing it. So medicine is very good at diagnosing people with symptoms and stuff, but not necessarily getting down to what's really the root cause. So this disease can manifest in a lot of ways. If you have mold toxins and you're susceptible, it can manifest as any type of autoimmune disease, whether it's multiple sclerosis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, Parkinson's, celiac disease, even things like narcolepsy, which is the disease where you just spontaneously fall asleep even while you're driving type of thing. There can be a biotoxin or mold toxin element to that. They can manifest as rashes or eczema or other types of autoimmune skin disorders. Some of them very bizarre and rare, and again, nobody understands really what's causing them. But that can manifest as an unrelenting rash or eczema that just really is not going to leave no matter what type of conventional medication you use. Sometimes even changing the diet won't help alleviate it because the toxins may still be circulating in you. It can manifest as sore joints, whether that's a rheumatoid arthritis or a psoriatic arthritis type of situation, or just general inflammation, fibromyalgia, gut issues. So people could be having brain fog, mental fog, and we currently also work with patients to help reverse early Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline, and we're seeing mold and an inability, genetic predisposition to not being able to eliminate the toxins. We've been seeing mold toxins probably in close to 80 to 90% of the cases that we're working with. So as far as memory loss, confusion, mental fog, depression, headaches, migraines, sleep disorders, insomnia, just wanting to sleep all the time, chronic fatigue, all of these kind of mental type psychiatric disorders, you really want to get yourself genetically tested for mold toxin susceptibility and then go through the right steps in order to ascertain if it's currently in your space environment or if it was in the past, and then work with a professional like us who has the detoxification protocol set up to be able to help that person fully eliminate the toxins in order to get the condition, whatever condition you have, under control. I will tell you that people with mold susceptibility very often show up with not just one of these conditions or symptoms, but a whole list. They got the mental stuff, skin stuff, gut stuff, headache stuff, whatever, and very often are already dealing with an autoimmune disease. So one thing to think about in the paradigm of overall health and how you're doing and whatnot is mold susceptibility to the toxins. So I hope you found that helpful. I know that was a lot of information. And if you're not 100% sure if you might have this or where to get tested, please feel free to call our office and set up a time for a free consultation.